end up with all kinds of viruses. What do you do with viruses? You know, there are all these issues. So we're looking at the possibility of having a, this is economic development, having a neighborhood geek squad type situation. Now that's permanent, that's not short term, because everybody needs help. And so right now, if you were to call Best Buy and have their squad come over to help you, how much does that cost?
Oh, a lot.
An arm and a leg. Okay. That answer. Seems to me this is a market opportunity. In other words, we've got Parkland training people from our community with these skills. We got people who know how to set up a business. And we've got people who need positive economic development. Okay? But this is the community now. And so we've got to establish some things here. First of all, this is not the welfare department. Okay? This is not handout moment. This is bootstrap, help your own community moment. That requires character, values. It requires what we need to make our community better. Now, you know, I'm old school, okay? I believe in being clean. I believe in being on time. You know, I believe in respect. You know, and I believe in doing a good job when you take a job, okay? We have to reinstill these things in our community, right? I'm not here talking about any handouts from anybody. The Community Benefit Fund, as I said before, is an investment in our community. It's not a handout. And so what we have to do is we have to change the script. We have to change the values. We have to change our orientation. Because I don't like to be in a room and people act like they're doing something for you. And then you wanting to get it, then you end up kind of begging and going back in them old habits, you know what I mean? We didn't look nobody in the eye, looking down and moving all the time, grinning. You know, hey, that's the old script. We don't need that script no more. Some of y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Some do.
I have a question.
Yes.
How did you guys off this soft money here, grant money, I should say? How do y'all determine the prices on these different churches?
The churches, I didn't decide anything. I'm just passing along the thing.
Right.
Nobody here was involved in giving this money away. But I don't know, maybe we have Will Kyles here, he's on the city council of Champaign, maybe you know something about it.
Don't know much about how that was divided up. I can look into it for you.
Okay.
But I think this looks like 3,000 was the max.
Mhm.
So somebody,
There was a committee inside the city of Champaign, not just city of Champaign staff, but it was Champaign staff and other people in the community who have been working in the digital divide area. And they set up a grant submission process and a grant evaluation process. And it you know, I'm talking about the processes, it wasn't really that complicated. And I think people submitted basically 1 to 2 page requests detailing what they were going to do with it, and then they evaluated them and awarded the spot.
And this money is only earmarked for that, right? Just for,
this
Yeah,
is a one
it's a
time
one-time.
thing.
Comcast gave it as part of the franchise renewal to Champaign.
I'm thinking is that they gave more than, so if you're asking if there's more available, I mean, it's all 16,000. I'm thinking they gave what, 50?
No, that they only gave 17,000.
It was only 17,000.
16 on here.
It was about $17,000. I was initially on that committee where stakeholders came together to discuss how that money was going to be utilized, and decisions was made through a competitive process. There were some meetings that were set up in terms of letting people know that the money would be dispersed, and then based upon the needs and, you know, those people who met the qualifications, then the money was granted. But there wasn't a lot of money. It was a very small amount of money that had to be distributed to the community.
Reverend Martin, I'm not trying to be funny now, but this money is earmarked exactly just for the computer makeup.
It was
Not for
how
nothing
to improve
Improve.
your use of digital technology.
Right.
So it could have been a lab, it could have been videoing, It could have, captured the sermons, it could have been the internal Wi-Fi in the church building. I'm not sure what people asked for, but it was for that.
And not paying on bills, right?
No.
I don't know if there was a regular bill we got paid, I mean, maybe that's. Okay,
Make sure.
yeah. Let me mention two things that are going on that are the kind of ideas I think we can think about. First of all, there is this question of a community help desk. We know a lot of people in the community are going to need help with their equipment, and then also a separate issue, need help with training. And so we are thinking about how to facilitate the help desk in such a way that it can lead to a business in the community that could be freestanding. In other words, we know the university and the cities have this concept of an incubator or some way to facilitate this development, and in particular, development in communities that are not as developed in this area as the norm. So what we want to do in our community, in this part of town, is to try to see, can we facilitate this development? So some of this money and the UC2B would be configured to help start a community help desk process that could spin off a business. That's one aspect of what we're trying to do, because we definitely need a help desk. But then also, another idea that's been developed or has been proposed, and there's some people here who are with this idea, of having online homework help.
Yeah.
There are a lot of retired teachers in town. And in fact, many of the substitute teachers are retired teachers. And so here we have a resource in our community. And I want to, there's this sister right here, I want to introduce this sister right here, Kenyatta Nance, who is from Champaign, high school graduate from here, graduate of the University of Illinois, etc. And she is a graduate student at the University of Illinois who's going to be helping us with the technology aspect of that online homework help. And Carol Lewis, former member of the school board, and others, we want to try to pull together, because if we can facilitate using our own skills and our own labor to use this technology to provide opportunities for children that weren't there before, we're making a step in the right direction. So that's another example of using the technology to reach out to our kids in the broader community. What other ideas are in your heads in terms of what we could?
Okay, I want to understand all this now. So now, what are you saying? Now, that idea you just brought up. Now, what are you saying for the benefit fund? Is that what we're going to use the fund for? Possibly?
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to get? Okay, the benefit fund, we're going to use that for what? To pay them, or what? To set that up?
Reverend
Help us.
Underwood, we're just at the beginning of this.
Okay, but just,
So what do you think?
give us some
What do you think? I
Okay.
want to know what you think.
Okay, let me, what our pastor asked about, first, let me tell you what's in my mind right quick. Let's go back, to this resolution. Okay, who's on this policy board? You say they're gonna make the final decision. That concerns me. Final. You know, who's on this board? Now, the community benefit, this community that we talking about. So we're gonna bring everything to this policy board and the final decision. No arbiter, no legal nothing, going to the courts. They gonna make the final decision. Whatever we say, they got the final decision. No arbitration, no mediation. I'm putting my lawyer hat on, although I'm not practicing. I went 3 years at IU, Big Ten University. So, you know, I have to think. My husband paid all that money. So I have to think, you know. So who's on this policy board? Because it's not going to mean anything to me, you know, if they're going to make the final decision, going to cut off whatever we say.
Reverend Bogan is on the board. You can talk to Reverend Bogan.
Okay, now who on this board, does he have a vote? Okay, well, it don't mean nothing. You got to have arbitration. Huh? Okay,
He's on
but I'm
board
just
and he does
saying, you know, this, we got to get this resolution straight. Cause if they're gonna make the final decision, you know, all this talking don't mean nothing if they're gonna make the final decision on everything. It sounds good, but we got to have some teeth. And I want y'all to get me on tape saying this. You see what I'm saying?
Reverend Underwood.
Yes, sir.
The reason we're having this meeting,
Am I out of school, sir?
no, I'm just trying to answer your concern.
Yes, sir.
It's a legitimate concern.
Okay.
And the answer is, that's why we're having our
And
meeting.
I'm not angry or nothing, I'm just doing
I
emphasis.
understand. We've been to many meetings together.
Yes, sir.
And the issue here is, we're going to have more than one meeting so that when we go to the policy committee,
Yes,
we come strong
yes,
and clear
yes,
and united.
yes,
And that's really important because many of the times in which we have come to the policy committee, we have not come united.
yes.
But when we came united around this resolution, the resolution was passed. So we do have a community benefit fund. Now, is it perfect? No. Do we know what we're gonna do with it? No, that's why we're meeting. So you need to be at every meeting, because that way, when we go to the policy committee, you will be absolutely clear and will be one of our strongest voices of unity, because we want you to be united with all of
See,
us.
I'm old, I'm getting old, and don't, you know, I'm getting old.
Don't
I'm
mention
just
the
saying.
date, because there are other people in here who might be older than you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I want to just say this, and I hope I say it correctly. When this program came to the community, they did not think about a community benefit fund. It wasn't on their mind. Reverend Lewis and I,
Yeah, I understand.
we took this idea to them because we were sick and tired of seeing millions of dollars come into this community and this community not benefit from it. They didn't want to do this. We brought Reverend Barnes on board. And we met and we said, there must be a way that some of these dollars help our community. And we continued to talk about that. And to finally, the power to be agreed to have a benefit fund, community benefit fund, that would put 1 to 5% into a fund to help do these things that we are talking about now. This ideal this young man has about training, don't give that up. You need to come to the table, because that was the purpose of having a benefit fund, so we could help our people. Now, I didn't say that for me to be recognized, but I said all of this to say to you who are here, continue to be part of this dialogue so we can put our minds together and come up with programs that can train and develop jobs that will benefit this community.
I just want to correct one thing that Reverend Nash said. It's not 1 or 2%. We ain't going to go 2%, but we're shooting for 5%.
Do you
That's right.
understand? Do you understand that the power to be was not thinking about
That's
a
right.
community benefit fund?
That's right.
It was not on the agenda. It was not on the minds of the people. We brought this idea to them.
And I want
Now
to-
we're asking you all, the community, you come together and let's develop this program. Let's make it work. Let's make sure that this group of young men that he has an opportunity. Maybe there's not a program to train them to do what he has, but there are many other programs that we can train those young men to get jobs.
There's
It's going
one
to
other
take every
program.
one of us coming to the table and sharing our ideas. My idea may not work this time. Put it on the shelf. Maybe it'll work next year.
I want to ask Reverend Barnes and Ron if you want to make a comment about the Wi-Fi initiative. There's been some other discussion. Maybe that should also be put on the table.
Ron? I didn't bring the letter. Did you have a copy?
Yeah, I have it. One of the ideas with, I'm Ron Bailey, I'm the head of African American Studies at the University of Illinois. You talked about the rings earlier, okay? The rings and the fiber to the home only represents a part of what we need to do, all right? So the other idea is that we would use the rings, we would use what gets installed in anchor institutions, and in a sense, create a Wi-Fi umbrella over other neighborhoods that can provide either free or darn near free Wi-Fi capacity. And so this is kind of making access closer to universal than we have historically thought. And so that's one idea that we're exploring now. The other possibility is to, I mean, this, you guys know this better than I do, but this is the University of Illinois. A lot of the cutting edge technologies in information technology was invented right there. And so really, there's nothing that we can't figure out what to do or find somebody who can figure it out and work with them to get maximum benefit to the Black community. So one of the things we've been talking about with Reverend Barnes and others is to create a collaboration between Afro Studies, the Ministerial Alliance, UC2B, in a sense to leverage the possibility of what we're talking about, to find more funds for training programs, for technology programs. It could be online training, and there's a long list of possibilities. So that's something that we've been kicking around over the last couple of 3 weeks.
Okay, I'm gonna call on Reverend Bogan, but before, I wanna, we've already lost some people. I wanna make sure everybody here contributes, you know, so I wanna ask everybody, and we'll be asking people to say something so that we really get everybody's voice. It's a terrible thing when we have a meeting and we only get a few people. We need everybody's voice. So go ahead, Reverend Bogan, and
Yeah, it's very important. Reverend Underwood has hit on a very good point about the ability to vote. It's very important that we understand the verbiage that is in this. We're talking about an advisory, and that's the key word, an advisory committee. The ability for me not to have a vote was foreseen long time before this even came to play. And I've sacrificed many hours to be on that board regardless of not having a vote, because we had to have someone there to actually put in the resolution to try to gain a vote. And that's what I had done. And so I believe that through that resolution, giving the community representative the ability to vote gives this advisory committee teeth, even more so, because it is so very important that the decisions that come from this community to the policy board have an anchor that is on the board that is going to represent that anchor to the point that whereas it compels the board to move. And right now, you're right, we don't have that. But the reason why we don't is because we don't have people coming out to push behind that. And just like for that, we need it for this committee. It's very important.
Okay. I'm gonna call on Chris Hand. What do you think about all this? I'm gonna call on everybody. Go ahead.
I think this is a great start, but I think we need some action items. Most of the ideas that we put out have come from you. I think some of us need some time to let it marinate and come up with some ideas, but I think we need to meet sooner or later, or even set up something online where we can start putting out ideas and really growing this, because I don't want it to be 2 months later and we have another meeting where we're still introducing the idea. People are asking, what's this all about questions. 2 months from now, we should have some concrete ideas and some plans of action, how we're moving forward. I want to ask you, when do we see this being actually in place and having this advisory board? Like, when do we see it actually moving and shaking? What's the timeline?
Well, I would certainly hope that by, say, May 1st, that we would have a plan on the desk of the policy committee. Because there are two main decisions that are being made that will determine the future. First is the extension. That creates breathing room. Other than that, the whole thing closes down at the end of the month. The second is that the UC2B structure is grant specific. And so for the sustainable run of the organization, there's going to be a new proposal for what the UC2B organization is going to be. And so that whole thing about representation and all of that is being renegotiated right now. And so that proposal will be coming soon. And the university and the two cities have been working on this. The problem of community representation is a very interesting problem. Because if you have elected officials on the city council, are they community representatives? They were elected by people. Another notion of community representation is people who select themselves. That is to say, volunteer to be a candidate for office or whatever. And so the question is, right, there is a sense in which Reverend Bogan represents the community. There's a sense in which Reverend Bogan doesn't represent the community in the same way that Will Kyles represent the community. Because Will Kyles can say, X number of 100 people or 1,000 people voted for me. Other people, you know, it's more ambiguous. So we have to really think through this question of who represents the community. We know, for example, in this town, there are many organizations, and some of the organizations have had changes in leadership for varying reasons. Who represents the community is an important question. But it's not an easy question to just answer because of any given individual. So when this new organization is set up, well, we're talking about our different organizations, and each of which put 6- and 7-figure money on the table. Now, who is going to set up a 6- or 7-figure money situation and then let somebody else determine how the money is going to be spent? Right? Does any church do that? I don't think so. The buck stops in every church, and who determines how the money goes? So likewise, in this public body of the university and the two cities, I don't think that we're going to get them to set aside money that comes through the public coffers and they have no oversight on that money. I just don't think that's going to happen. If somebody thinks we can do that, hey, let's try to do it. But I don't think that's going to happen. So the advisory thing, right, is decided on the basis of how united we are, because there's no UC2B that's going to overturn a united community. But if we come in disunited and everybody got different things to say, then of course they're going to try to make a decision. And some people will be approved and some won't. That's why we're having our meetings now, so that we really work through all the differences and everything. And like the brother said, maybe my idea doesn't work this time. I mean, that's the way consensus works. We'll develop a plan, and then we'll all show up at the appropriate time to get the plan adopted. But right now, we're in the brainstorming, consensus building, writing down the text, because eventually we'll have to get down to the actual words on a piece of paper. But we're not at that stage quite yet. Right now, I think Chris's idea is well taken. Let's create a basis for the brainstorming so we really get all of our ideas on the table. And when I say all our ideas, I'm not just talking about old heads. I'm talking about whatever anybody has to say. But we have to start the community discussion. That's what this meeting really is about. What do you think about this, Danielle?
I want to talk a little bit about the user experience part, because once we...
Why don't you let everybody see you?
Oh, hello everyone. Kenyatta. I just want to talk a little bit about the user experience part, because once we have fibers in the ground, everyone has the internet connectivity, then they have this machine in front of them, whether it's a laptop, whether it's a desktop, or whether it's a mobile device, and the power of these devices. I was born in Chicago, but I was raised in a local community, and I didn't have my first...
Where high school did you go to?
Central. I didn't have my first computer until about sophomore year in high school, and I felt that I was so behind everyone and so behind the times, but I always loved technology, always loved computers, and I just felt that once I got a computer that my life would change, and then it really did change. So I started off, I had this big monitor, this huge CPU sitting on the floor, and I was in Birch Village, by the way, if everyone knows what that is. I was in Birch Village in my room, and sort of the world opened up to me as a young person. I was like 16 years old, and all of a sudden I had the world at my fingertips. And I went from being isolated in the top floor of my room in Birch Village to talking to people from India, from Bangladesh to China. And for me, that kind of blew my mind, but I just want to fast forward a little bit and tell you a little bit about what my knowledge of computers has done for me. So as a part of this passion for technology, once I got to college, I said, you know what, I'm tired of spending wasteful time on Facebook. So I kind of Googled the words, how to make money online. And it changed my perspective totally. Because I understood that just with a laptop, even with my mobile device, that I could put some web pages up, I could learn a little bit about what's called internet marketing, have people come into my websites, and I could make money. And so that whole concept of entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial spirit is what I find very powerful about having this fast broadband connection. Because back then it was just dial up, you know, I had to and all of that stuff, and it was going really slow, but just having the power of the internet, anyone can start a business. And so I like to approach, from my perspective, I feel it very powerful to use these types of things for entrepreneurial ambitions. And so that's one of the things that I wish to see come to the table, is that so people can understand, yes, we have this internet, but let me show you what it can do for you. Anyone can become an entrepreneur. I don't care if you're 15 years old, you're at Franklin Middle School, you're at Central, Centennial, Urbana. With the power of the internet, a little skill and ability, anyone can become an entrepreneur and change your life forever. So I see this, I like this bootstrap way, whether it's, you know, through this community fund or even outside of that. I just feel that it's very powerful what we have in our hands, and letting some of these young people experience this power to create mobile applications that might make some money, to create web applications that might make some money, bridging, you know, a lot of the skills that people have in computer science from the University of Illinois or at Parkland. Once those minds come together and they have this innovation that takes place, I think that we can empower the youth to actually make tangible things and to become economically compensated for what they do.
Beautiful, beautiful. See, this is what we're talking about.
But
Will
so now how
Krause,
she
what do you
gonna-
think? Just a minute. Go ahead, Will.
That was pretty powerful. Actually, like you, I started off at 14 doing a computer program, and it actually helped me decide some direction of where I wanted to go to college. But my idea is not really a new idea. It's one that you all have already discussed, and that's that issue about the community Wi-Fi. I think that the community fund could specifically offset costs with the Wi-Fi, especially with the, I think the people who would get the most advantage are people who live in apartments, or kind of help solve that tenant landlord type of question that is kind of out there. You know, the tenant wants it, you know, but they have to go through, get permission through the landlord. You know, having the Wi-Fi would definitely help with that issue, so I think that community Wi-Fi would be great.
I'd like to ask the sister who's the president of the Ministerial Alliance. Perhaps you want to make a comment about what your thinking is and what direction we might want to go.
Comments at the last meeting. I guess kind of where my heart is, just seeing a lot of things that have gone on in the community the last month, and the youth, of course, they're an important part of our future. And I see the kids been exposed somewhat in the school with computer activities, with the ones who don't have them in their homes, and then don't have access, like you said, you were in Birch Village, there's some that still don't have access. And, you know, sometimes there's a disconnect in the school with that, and I see on here, there, you know, some grants that have been given to certain areas, and I know this Champaign Leadership Academy, for example, they aren't able to provide transportation to some kids after school, so I'm hoping that that won't prevent the kids from going to this program that will help them in their academic support. So I'm looking at it as, how can we fill the gaps that currently exist? And what are we gonna do? Because I don't, you know, it's great that we have, you know, areas that are getting grants. I don't have a problem with areas getting grants. But that those grants be, used and the community people know about it. And we go out and reach out to these people, you know, that are on the street and say, hey, you know, when you say the jobs, you can't get a job unless it's online. You can't get an application, you can't get a job unless you go online and fill out an application. So that those people feel comfortable in going and doing it, and they have to help someone who's there hands-on. So we need what, I think in the last meeting, someone said train the trainer. We need train the trainer, so we have people that are, you know, contacts within the community. Well, let's go out and find the people that we can train within the churches. For example, New Hope and Pastor Nash is member of the Lions, and he said they have a lab and they're willing to, you know, people can come. And so if they're not, then we gotta go out. Where can we go? Where are the people, you know, the barber shops, let's go out there. So that's where my heart is right now. What can we do? Because we're talking, and he asked for the deadline, we need to start working action items and put it together. Now, some people who have been here, and thank you for those who have been here at these meetings, because I haven't been at all of them, and I haven't been as part of the discussion, so I appreciate those who had plenty of time in these meetings and bringing information. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, and then Carol, and then, oh, okay, then Carol, and then Chris. Carol, and then Joe, and then Chris, and Kate.
I have deleted, I have a senior class coming in. But I just wanted to go back to, we talked about community leaders. Have to go back a little bit, and know where we are now. It used to be when you talked about the African American community, you talked about people who lived in that community.
Yeah.
And that was, everybody on the one side of town was an African now. So we knew who our leaders were because they were right there in the community, we lived there. I grew up here, by the way, so I know. So I'm just saying that now, you have people that live now out of the community, but still feel like they're still part of the community because they go to church there, they do different things. So that makes it harder to determine what you're talking about when you say community.
Yeah.
When you say African American community, or when you're talking about, are you talking about the total community? Are you talking about the African American community? Because I don't live in the community right now, but I grew up in it, my church is there, so this is my community. So we need to, what are we talking about when we say community? That's another thing. And that's why I'm saying we need to get together to understand what community are we talking about?
Yeah.
And, because now we're all widespread, okay? So that's just, I want you to think about that.
Sure.
But one thing I'm talking about is, it is very important with some of the training and so forth, because right now, in our class, I have Brian Bell's gonna come in and talk to our seniors about how to get computers, because a lot of them don't have them. They're coming to class, but they don't really have one in the home. So they need to have access to get a computer, so he's gonna come and talk to the seniors in just a few minutes on his program. So that's what I need to leave, but I just wanted to put that out about community. Think about what you're talking about when you talk about leadership and the community.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Okay, Chris, Reverend Barnes, sorry, Joe first.
I just have a question. I understand that the target for recruiting subscribers
Yeah.
fell far short
Yeah.
of what they wanted.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if this fund that we're talking about could be used to recruit subscribers, because you're talking about youth having access to computers and all that kind of stuff. But many of the youth won't have it in the targeted areas because their parents thought, well, we don't need that thing.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if that would be, if some of the funds from this program could be used to recruit or convince people that they need the computer in this day and age, and their children need it more than they do.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. The question is how to achieve that.
Yeah, I know.
You know, I mean, are we talking about buying a billboard for a month, or are we talking about creating best practices, sustainable best practices in the community, which themselves are advertisement for the project? I mean, you know somebody and it's working and it's impacting their kids, that's gonna motivate you. So we have to figure out how to do that, but that's exactly what we want to do. I'm forgetting the order, but Reverend Barnes, well, Chris,
Chris.
and then Barnes, yeah.
Just listening and then using what I know that's going on. I don't think we recognize how powerful we are and the power and the things that we are doing. I think our power is strong. Our knowledge of what we're doing is low. There's so many things going on in this community. I mean, Sister Carol just left to go teach a seniors class. A lot of people in this room didn't even know that was happening. And the class is usually filled to capacity. I know Reverend Nash has a lot of things going on in his church. We just got the sheet with 5 things in the community getting money to do things related to technology. We need to figure out what they're doing, how we can access it. Let's create best practices and share with each other. You know, we shouldn't keep trying to reinvent the wheel. Let's create a system where these things are going on with this technology, and maybe this what this fund could use to create a resource that has total buy-in from everybody. Because a lot of this information exists here and there in pockets, but we don't know about it. And a lot of organizations aren't buying into those systems yet. If we can get buy-in and really publicize it so people can't say, I didn't know, no one told me. Everybody just kind of knows. If you want to know where that information is at, it's at this place. And so if that's something we can work on.
Good, Peter?
Well, there's a whole bunch of little cool things that have been talked about here. And I wanted to talk about sort of at a higher level, what, in my observation of both UCB and these processes in general, what has made things successful and what has made things not work out. The things that have been successful, so the people who have votes on the policy committee are, except for Abdul, largely followers. They want to be jumping on a bandwagon they're not gonna get attacked for, that has broad support by lots of different people, that is non-controversial, it's not risky. In order for any of these ideas to be successful going before that committee, they need to be fleshed out and thought through. They need to have some big, some 800, at least 400-pound gorillas behind them. Things like if this, the program for having homework support, well, you need the buy-in from the school districts probably in order for the policy committee to really take it seriously. In addition, each of these things needs both to be technically feasible and economically feasible. And that's another thing that a lot of times in the brainstorming phase, it's great to come up with ideas without thinking about feasibility. You then have to turn around though and try and figure out how can we make it happen, both technically and economically, so that it's a sustainable project. It seems to me that over the next 3 months, if our goal is to have on the table a set of proposals, we need to be setting up a process for helping make them feasible, make them sustainable, and make them and create the presentation, the words on paper that make all of that clear. And that's a tough process.
May I say something to him quickly? Okay, let me give you an example. When I was a counselor at the middle school, you know, they had a mentoring program. Okay, what they would tell me, you know, the kids that I would get, they wanted the cream of the crop. I mean, they didn't want the snotty-nosed kids. And they didn't want those kids who were very, very low because it was gonna make their program look bad. They needed someone who's gonna be successful so they can show the statistics. So the kids who really needed it, you know, they didn't want those kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I know
So
exactly
if
what
we
you're
wanted to really get the people who really need it, you know, so how can we do that, you know? How can we really capture what's needed to show the people, you know, in the powers to be, you know? And so, you know what I did? I said, forget your program. I got Mother Kennedy, Sister McMullen, and all those folks, and made them mine and let them work with the snotty-nosed kids. And I forgot about that program. So, but UC2B, you know, the program she's talking about, can we just go get the snotty-nosed kids and the kids that's not gonna make it, the one that's going to prison that we know, but is it gonna make the program look good for them? I don't know. I mean, can we convince them with those kids? I mean, this is just an example.
Reverend Underwood, we
Yes.
are not here trying to please or to fit the expectations of anybody other than ourselves.
But I'm talking about
And
the
so-
policy board, you know.
I
do you
am speaking
understand
as a
what I mean?
member
Okay.
of the policy board, but I'm
Yeah,
also
but you're
speaking
a
as a
minority.
member of this community. And what happens in this room is something that we decide. And then we organize our community, and let me just be very frank about it, to impose our will on the decision-making process, because we decide. And that's the way democracy works. In other words, if we can mobilize our community and we can unite our community, we have to do that with the expectation that we're going to win. That's the only way to go into any kind of, I mean, I'm interested in the NFL, and so I know my team is going to win. And I'll tell you about it after the meeting's over. I'll tell you who's going to win the Super Bowl. But my point is that that's the way you enter into a situation. You plan to win. We are the first important community technology program in New York. You know what it was called? Playing to Win. Beautiful. Nationally known program. Playing to Win. So you are asking questions in a certain way because people have not won. And therefore very skeptical of the university, and you should be. You should be skeptical of any power. But we're going to go beyond that level of skepticism because we are going to win. We're going to have programs we want. Yes?
What you're saying is absolutely correct, and it also reflects on what Reverend Underwood is saying too. Because when we get back to Will Kyles as an example as being the elected official, he's not on the policy board, he's on the city council. But before he can make a decision for those who elected him, we first have to get it through the policy board to even get them to ask him the question. And that's why we need the support. That's why the advisory committee has to have a bite. That's why the community representative on the policy board has to have a vote. That's why your support.
Before you leave, stop that, brother. Just a minute. Let him
That's
finish.
why your support is so tantamount in what we're doing. Because without that line of thought, without that line of transference of information to get the policy board to even ask Will the question, we're already shut down in the water. So it's very important that happens, regardless of who of us is on the policy board. He has to have that vote to be able to prompt the policy board to be in line with these things so that this community benefit can support the community in the way that we outline.
Okay, now here's what I would like to suggest we do just before we end. We've got a proposal for the churches, and we have critical leadership here. And so I was hoping that maybe we could have just a 5-minute conversation about the proposal to the Ministerial Alliance and for this community Wi-Fi. And then also, the idea of something like online homework help or something that provides a service that can motivate and pull our people together. So we can have just a 5-10 minute conversation on those two issues. Maybe the Ministerial Alliance conversation over here and the school-oriented literacy training over here. And then the last issue would be to agree on when we meet next. How much time should we have between now and when we meet next? Did you want to?
I wanted
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to have the bite. Power only respects power. Early on, when we talk about the Community Benefit Fund, the Community Benefit Fund is a sidebar of a larger process called the Community Benefit Agreement. That helps determine and ascertain who that leadership is. That leadership is comprised of a broad spectrum across the community. The success of Dr. King's movement did not rely just on people of color. it relied on the alliances with whites and others. And so when we start looking at a community benefit agreement, inside of that agreement, and it's an established policy procedure that is adopted across these United States, when we start looking at a community benefit agreement, it will help us establish who that leadership is, who that base of power is. And when that power speaks, the gatekeepers have to listen because it's representative. Power only respects power. People won't listen to me, but when I can put 1,000 people into the room, then that's power. And so the community benefit benefit will be further strengthened by us understanding the community benefit agreement. And I challenge everybody to do your research on what a community benefit agreement is. That's going to give us the infrastructure that we're going to need as we mobilize and move forward.
Beautiful. Now, if we can have an agreement on when we meet next. Next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? We don't want to slow it down.
Next week sometime. I'm flexible, so I'm.
Well, I just need to hear, some proposals so we can,
Can it be not on the first or third Saturday, because we meet at 10 a.m. usually on
what
the
Saturday
third
is this?
We canceled it.
I understand, beautiful. The question is, so it's either next week or 3 weeks.
Next week is the 26th.
3 weeks, because, can we do 3 weeks, because Dr. Martin Luther King and all of that this month? Can we do 3 weeks?
Okay, let's do it this way. If we meet in 3 weeks, then the 5 to 10 minute conversations we need to have should result in a point person being selected to present information, so within that 3 weeks, there's some work going on, some phone calling and some discussion. So at our next meeting, we actually have, say, at least one sheet of paper from each group, so we push the conversation along. I don't want to overshoot an expectation, but I want us to meet the notion of not having another general meeting, but actually to meet on more pieces of paper where we begin to talk about pushing some of these ideas forward. The notion of making them practical and probable.
Only thing wrong with 3 weeks, most people probably put off doing anything with it for a couple of weeks. So.
Okay, I tell you what, I'm with that. Let's do this. The general meeting will be 3 weeks from today. Right? But everybody on the A team is meeting next week. You must decide who you are. Everybody with that?
You're saying there are actually 2 teams.
Well, I'm saying that there is a team within the team.
Subcommittee?
Okay.
I think he's saying that the people who want to actually do work and get stuff moving meet here next week. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying everything that everybody has said. In other words, there's a meeting next week, and we're going to try to develop some paper that would then be sent out to a broader list in preparation for the meeting in 3 weeks. Everybody with that? Great, okay. The Ministerial Alliance discussion, the churches, the free Wi-Fi proposal is here. The training, educational, online homework or help is over here. 5 or 10 minutes. And other than that, eat the donuts and coffee, and we reconvene here in a week, those of us who are going to.
9 o'clock?
9 o'clock.
Okay.
We got to go
Okay.
to dinner, Bishop.
Let's have Barnes and Ron and Nash, you just have a quick discussion. Kate and maybe Imani, and we had this conversation here.